All right, so if we take a look here, we are going to be doing notes, and it's more slope. More slope. Hey, back to that. Yesterday we talked about slope, and today we're going to talk about slope. More slope. Gotta love it. Slope, slope, slope. All right. If we had snow out there, you could be hitting the slopes. It's slope time. All right. There's a Mr. Harris joke for you. Okay, so we learned yesterday about slope, where we can count our rise and our run, and we also learned about identifying whether it's going to have a positive or negative slope. So before we even find slope on this graph, we should be able to identify that from left to right, this is going down. So this should have a negative slope. So you should be able to identify right now, just by looking at this, you should be able to say, hey, if anybody asks, or if I need to identify my slope, once my pen works, once they're like, hey, we need to identify slope, you should be able to say, hey, this has a, maybe it has a negative slope. I don't know why I can't write. Crazy times here. Let's try this one. Nope, still not writing. All right, let's try exiting screen. All right, well, this is a fun video. Well, my computer's gone cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. I can't do anything, guys. All right, there we go. Now we're catching up. Just run a little slow. All right, let's try this again. Okay, so we should be able to identify that this has a negative slope. Hopefully you can read that, negative slope. All right. So that should be the first thing. You should be like, hey, look at it. Left to right, it's going down. We should have a negative slope. Now, yesterday we learned how what we do is we start at the left point. We figure out our vertical, our change in y, okay, our change in y over our change in x. So we learned that it was kind of like a y over x. And now you're hearing me say the words change. In mathematics, if you see a triangle like this, so a triangle next to a y and a triangle next to x, that means change in y over change in x. That's what that means. You'll see a worksheet with that. So in particularly, what we have here to calculate slope, there's this fun, wonderful formula. The wonderful formula to calculate slope, I want you guys to make sure you have this entrenched into your brain. It is y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1, or the change in y, so change in y over the change in x. So we can calculate. So yes, here you may say, Mr. Harris, why would I use the formula? I'm just going to count. I'm just going to sit here and count. Well, sometimes we don't have nice, easy points where we can calculate. It might be easier to do the formula. So if we look here, we're given the 2 points. So both these points have ordered pairs. This first point, we're going to label this point 1, has an ordered pair of -2, 3. And we're going to label this point, this is point 2. This has an ordered pair of 1, -1. So what we can do here now is we can label these. We can identify this. We can say this is point 1, maybe, if my pen decides to work. We might be lagging again here in a little bit. Yep, we're lagging. We might have some things pop up. There it is. Look at it. Hey, here we go. Okay. So this is point 1. That's a terrible one. So we're going to erase it. Just bear with me. Gotta love these videos. They're so much fun. Mr. Harris making fun of himself. So right here we got point 1. And then we also have point 2. So that means what we can do is we can plug things in. Well, the y2 is the y value of point 2. The y2 is going to be -1. Because on the second point, the y value on the second point is -1. Then we're going to do minus, well, y1. What's the y value on point 1? It's 3. Okay. And then we're going to do all over. Then we go back, we do x2. So it's all just substitution. So the x value on point 2 is 1. And then we're going to do minus the x value on point 1 is -2. And then, hey, look, here's that adding and subtracting integers. So now we do some math. -1 minus 3 is going to give us -4. And 1 minus -2, well, those turn into a giant plus sign. So that gives us 3. So we can say we have a slope of -4/3 by doing the calculation or the mathematical. We could take a look here from what we learned yesterday. Start at the furthest left point. Let's go down 1, 2, 3, 4. Remember, if we go down 4, that's a -4. Now we're even. So now we go over 1, 2, 3. So that's 3. So just like here, we had a rise of -4, we had a run of 3. And if you look here, that was the slope that we were able to calculate using the formula. So this is the formula you're going to make sure you have entrenched into your brain. You should have it etched into your brain. You should never, ever forget this formula, okay? Do not forget this formula. This y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. That's how you calculate slope. That's the formula you're going to use, right? And the biggest thing you need to do is you need to make sure you identify your second point and your first point. All right, so we're going to use that formula here on this next page. So now we have these 2 points. All right, let's choose some colors here. We got point 1 and we have point 2. Okay, so we're going to use that formula at y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Well, if we remember, our rise is our y's, and if we remember, our run is our x's. So to help you out sometimes, so if you want to calculate your rise, remember it's going to be y2, so 4, minus our y1, which is 1, which gives us 3. And then our run is going to be the x2, which is 5, minus our x1, which is 3. 5 minus 3 is 2. So now we have our rise of 3, a run of 2. So we can say our rise over run, or our slope, is 3 over 2. All right. Now, let's say you're like, well, Mr. Harris, does it matter which one's my y, which one's my 1, and which one's my 2? Let's try that out. What if I said, oh, let me use a different color here. What if I said this was 2, and what if I said this was 1? Well, let's try it. Let's do y2, 1, minus y1, which is 4. And then let's do x1, which is 3, minus x2, which is 5. Let's do some math. 1 minus 4 is -3, and 3 minus 5 is -2. Well, Mr. Harris, they're different. One's negative, one's positive. No, because if you remember the rules, a negative divided by a negative would be a positive. So if both numbers are negative, technically this is a positive slope. So it doesn't matter which one you label 1 and which one you label 2. As long as you do the math correctly, you will get the same slope. Remember, if you have 2 negatives make a positive. All right. All right, so let's do the next one. I did this first setup to help you out, kind of see, let's calculate our y's and calculate our x's, and then put them together to get our rise over our run. So let's do another one. Let's do y. So let's label this as our 2. Oh, we're gonna lag a little bit again. Sorry, guys. Yeah, there we go. So this is our 2 and this is our 1. So let's do y2, our rise, -4 minus 3, all over, let's go 6 minus 6. Well, -4 minus 3 is -7. All over 6 minus 6 is 0. So, well, Mr. Harris, is that my slope? -7 over 0? Well, what do we remember yesterday? We talked about if 0 is in the denominator, our slope is then called undefined. Undefined. And if you remember, undefined is a vertical line. So if you have a 0 in the denominator, so when you calculate this, the 0 is in the denominator, it's an undefined slope, which means a vertical line. All right, let's look at another one. Let's do, let's use this pink one. Oh, no, wait, that one's not the pen I want. So let me change out my pen. Just bear with me, guys. Yep. All right, let's do this one. All right, let's label, let's just to change it up, let's label this our 2 and let's label this one our 1. So let's do y2. So let's go 4 minus 1, and then 3 minus 5. Well, 4 minus 1 is 3, and 3 minus 5 is -2. So my slope would be 3 over -2. So we know this has a negative slope. And let's look at the last one. Let's label this one 1, and let's label this one 2. So if we do y2, 7 minus y1, 7 all over 0 minus -2. As you can see, that minus sign doesn't take place of that. So 7 minus 7 is 0. 0 minus -2 is a +2. And 0 in the denominator is a 0 slope. So this has a slope of 0, right? Which would then be a horizontal line. All right, so yesterday we learned how to count. Now we're learning the formula, the y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Make sure you label your 1 point and your 2 point. Remember, if you have a 0 in the denominator, it's an undefined slope. If you have a 0 in the numerator, it is 0 slope. Remember, if both the rise and the run are negative, it's a positive slope. All right. So again, remember this formula right here, y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. If you see change in y over change in x, all that's saying is use your formula.